So I think the biggest industry in the world that is going to get more and more prominence is this industry called direct to consumer. So it's a new distribution age. Earlier, distribution was done through retailers and distributors and dealers and stockists, etc. Today, companies are going direct to consumer. Now, direct to consumer happens through multiple platforms. One, it happens through your own website. It can happen through marketplaces like Amazon and Flipkart, but it can also happen through influencer commerce. In fact, I'm going to talk about influencers more in detail, but just imagine that a person who is an influencer helps you sell the product, then you can just pay a cost of sale. So this industry, the biggest challenge is that the previous classical industry of distribution did not collect customer data. So if a Unilever, when it sells a Lifebuoy, or a Procter & Gamble sells a product, they actually don't know who's buying it because they don't have any data of the consumer. You go to a shop, you buy it, the shop may get some data from you, but they also don't have your email address or mobile number. But direct to consumer sector, what it does is it collects the information about the customer. Now that customer information is very, very useful in multiple ways. First way is that every time when you sell to the customer again, you don't have to pay anybody because you're selling directly to the consumer. Second thing what it does is it allows you to basically understand this concept called customer lifetime value. So even if I'm selling a product for 100 rupees and my cost of acquisition is 300 rupees, but I'm going to make from that customer 50 rupees every month for the next few years, then the cost of acquisition 300 rupees is worthwhile because it doesn't matter, right? Because now I have a direct relation with the customer. And this is where a lot of industries are going to be disrupted. Because what happens is that if you have no relation with the customer, then what happens is you have to find new customers every time and you don't care too much to retain the customer because you are making a sale and you're making money. But if you have a lifetime relation with the customer, then customer service, quality of the product, making sure you're solving the customer's problem, all these things become important. And I think this is the biggest sort of shift that is happening in the world where classical companies and classical distribution is changing. In fact, Profit Wheel, we are trying to help direct to consumer companies in how do you find the most profitable customers. But this is only relevant if the companies know the customer. So the first party data is the most important part of collecting customer data on who's buying your product. In fact, COVID, a lot of my friends, their sales went from 100 crores to zero because shops were closed. But if they had a direct to consumer business where they could sell direct to consumers, the consumption was still happening and they could have actually continued their business if they had customer data. So I think the biggest shift that most companies will have to do in the next few years is how do they collect customer data. So one of my companies that actually does customer data collection and they work with Distillery is that they put a QR code with prices of scooters and iPads as a QR code on the packaging. So what a consumer does is when he buys the bottle, he buys the 20-liter bottle, he scans it and he can win a scooter. But what it does is that 1/3 of all consumers are scanning the Distillery bottle. So then what happens is that data gets collected and then they can then build a relationship with that customer, and when the next time that person buys it, they don't have to pay the distribution any amount of money in that distribution phase. So I think this is the most important skill set that companies will have to do, is how do you survive in a direct to consumer age, and that can only be done by collection and effectively utilization of first party data. So I think there are a lot of multiple ways. I think the strength is that if you already have a distribution, then you can actually have systems where you collect data from retailers. So a lot of companies have these contests and these contests allow them to collect data. Having your own store and your own website, I think is another way to collect first party data. There is also ways in which you can do partnerships with credit card companies. So in the age of abundance, what happens is that collaboration becomes a competitive advantage. So the more and more companies you collaborate with, so many times your customer and that company's customer is the same, but your product is totally different. Then you can collaborate and share first party data. So their customer data comes to you, your customer data comes to them. And today what happens is when you share data, you actually don't have to share any data. So there are methods in which, let's say in Facebook, there is something called custom audience, where I can create a custom audience of my data, my customer data, and other companies can target those customers in partnership with me and vice versa. So at no point in time I'm sharing first party data which is personally identifiable information, but I'm still able to collaborate with companies and make my sales grow by partnering with them and targeting their customers. So again, I can go deep into it, but there are multiple ways in which one can prosper in the digital age, but having a first party data collection strategy and using that strategy for creating better content, doing better creative, doing better media planning is almost essential if you want to succeed in the digital age. So as I said earlier, right, if you want to build a relationship with customers, I think content is the way to go. So once you know that these are your cohorts, these are the preferences they have, these are the interests they have. In fact, our profit wheel tool, what it does is you put the data in, it tells you what interests those people have. So based on those interests, you create content. Once content is consumed, so earlier what would happen is that for advertising, you had to interrupt content. You would interrupt the news, you would interrupt the newspaper, you interrupt content to advertise. But today what happens is that many companies have only few million customers. If you take, let's say, a luxury product like a car, like a Mercedes or a BMW, they hardly sell 100,000 cars in a year. So they sell 100,000 cars in a year, the total target audience, addressable market size for them is hardly a few million. When you talk about 100 million population, a few million per se don't matter. So now what happens is that can you now target them by creating content? So what happens is that you create content that a luxury car buyer will consume, and in that process of consumption you can actually build a relationship with him or her as well as sort of sell your products and services. So the way to go for most companies is going to be is instead of interrupting content on other publishers, can you become a publisher, cater to a very niche audience who's your customer. So once you identified who your customer is, your target audience is, if you can create content for them, and content does not mean a blog or a video, content can mean a game, content can mean an app, content can mean anything that the person is going to consume. If you take today, metaverse is becoming big where you can actually have your own existence, a lounge where your customers can come in. That lounge that you've created on metaverse is content. So content has a very, very wide scope of what content can be, but I think the best way to build a relationship with your customer is to provide content that solves certain problems that he has in his life, entertains him, educates him, and basically the more and more value you provide to your customer, the more chances are that you'll build a better relationship with. So if you are a middleman, then your business is going to get disrupted. But this has always been the case with humanity, right? What would happen is earlier you would sell products, people didn't know the price. So what would happen is that you were able to charge a certain price and people didn't have information where to buy it from. Now because of Google, because of directories, people found that information, they can go directly to the manufacturer. So as a middle person, you have to make sure that you're adding value. So today, if you take today, I have certain tools in Profit Wheel. Now the fact of the matter is my customers will know that these are tools and platforms and SaaS products that we sell. But what happens is that it requires implementation, it requires consulting, it requires what insights our products offer. Somebody has to take those insights and do the actions that are required to deliver value to the clients. Then what happens is our partners play a role. So if you are a partner to any firm, if it's a physical product or a software product, just make sure that you're adding value. If you're going to transfer that product as is to the person who's the direct user, then sooner or later the direct user and the customer will go direct to the manufacturer. So my recommendation is that today if a software product like an Adobe costs $100, the implementation of Adobe costs $300 to $400. So that means the implementation partners make more money than the company itself. So I think there is a lot of opportunity to adding value to whatever we do. Just make sure that you're adding value. But if you are a pure middleman where you are only playing the role where the customer does not have the information needed to buy the product directly, then sooner or later you're going to get disrupted, because companies like Google, companies like Facebook, companies like ours, our role is to make sure that we tell you who the customer is. And if that's the only role you're playing, then you're going to get disrupted.